some differences in perception that people have about what would require, like how bad would it have to be before you would go to get therapy. And I think sometimes people's expectations and definitions of that are really extreme. So people that are in acute distress, or people who are in a space of being psychotic, or people being so mood disordered that they can't leave their home. Like, so we go to these extremes before we think it warrants mental health services, versus recognizing like there's a whole lot of points on the spectrum in between that would still benefit from mental health services.
Right. And what I also find interesting about what you're saying is that does tend to lead people into a therapist's office, that sort of acute situation, or something that's become so unavoidable. Maybe it is fun, but it's become so unavoidable that you have to deal with it. But I find interesting that we do our yearly checkups at our doctor, right, to make sure we're in good physical health. Why don't we do a yearly checkup with a mental health professional to make sure that we're dealing with stressors in our life appropriately? Why isn't that a part of the culture, do you think?
I think that conceptually that's a more difficult concept. So there are mental health awareness months, mental health awareness days, and that and during those times of the year, people can go and do like broad mental health screeners. So basically doing a broad screening for depression, for anxiety, or mental distress. Those usually kind of the three things that pop up. That we have pretty good measures. So that's a technical term. We have pretty good psychological surveys that we can use to assess whether people are in some state of functional mood state, or if they are in more distressed. And then we can talk about the surveys are more refined to help us figure out, like, is that more of a depressed mood, more of an anxious mood, more of some sort of or mixed or unclear kind of mental distress. So we can do that, and that does happen in certain communities. I don't think it's standard practice, and I also think like psychological health is different than physical health. Even though I personally have some challenges with our overall healthcare system in this country, I think though our measures for health focus way too much on disease and not on actual wellness and health. But things are a little bit more cut and dry with diagnosing physical health disorders. That's a different animal than talking about someone's psychological health and what that looks like. There's a whole lot of other factors in terms of like context, person's age and development, a person's cognitive capacity, a person's cultural background, current cultural context. All of those things play a role in one state of mental health. And so I think being able to have just like a broad screener like that is a way more daunting prospect than going in and getting your like blood checked for cholesterol levels and blood sugar levels and iron and all of that sort of stuff.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And you know, one snapshot in time for one's psychological health may be great. And then 3 weeks later, you know, all hell is broken loose. So I think we need to think about it more holistically and complexly than we do. But I also think that we need to not only, for me, most of the clients that I have worked, no, that's not true. A lot of the clients that I work with currently, aren't folks that necessarily have a diagnosable mental disorder, and yet they are still able to benefit from therapy. So I also want to like move away from this. I have to have a diagnosable disorder, right? I have to have major depressive disorder. I have to have anxiety. I have to be schizophrenic to benefit from mental health services. I think there is a wide range. I know there's a wide range of other concerns and challenges that happen in between being in a state of mental wellness and being in a state of mental distress that don't necessarily align with a specific diagnosis. So I think if we kind of relegate the conversation to whether you have a disorder or not, it's also problematic.
And I think that's what I was looking for when I said earlier, people don't have a definition of mental health and what that means. I think a lot of people do look at it the same way, which is why I kept drawing the parallels with physical health. People look at it as, I'm sick, let me go see a doctor, right? Or let me do this checkup. Let me check up on my cholesterol, like you said. When you're dealing with mental health, it may not be you're dealing with major depressive disorder or bipolar disorder. It may be you needing to learn new skills to cope with something, getting different tools and resources and how to readjust your life. That's not totally different, but it's a different approach than what we're used to, especially in Western medicine, which is deal with something when something's a problem. Mm-hmm. But if you don't identify that there's a problem, you never deal with it.
Right. But I also know folks, I know folks based upon people that I can see, touch, hear, and smell today. And I've had conversations with them where even if that is the case, going to see a therapist still isn't a possibility for them. It's still not among their list of resources or coping. So I think there's another layer there too. And I think even for some folks who experience physical pain and physical discomfort, they don't go to get health services.
This is true.
There are lots of people that are like, you know what, I'm just going to put some Windex on it, or just put just give me some Robitussin and I'll be okay, right?
We're not putting Windex on your brain unless you're trying to shine up your weave, which could really be fierce. Now that I'm thinking about it, I may want to try it because I got this little bald spot up here on top. Maybe that Windex.
Try Windex. They might get it to come back.
Right?
But might get it to come back. You never know.
And if I find out that's the secret, and these kids is out here buying Rogaine, trust me, I tell you, I'm going to put Windex in a bottle, put a Rogaine label on it, and make this check. I need you to know me for who I am.
And as you should.
But the other thing about going to speak to a mental health professional, and we've spoken about this offline, in our casual day-to-day conversations, it's why should I put somebody I don't know in my business? Why am I going to go but more than just putting you in my business, why am I going to pay you to be up in my business, right?
Yeah.
I got ones and twos up and down the road up in my business. I got a stalker on Facebook trying to get into my Dupee Deeps. Why am I going to take and sit down and write a check to pay you to be up in my business? So,
as a complete aside, I feel like when I do have a Facebook stalker, I will have made it. I'm looking for, that's my index of when I'm like, I'm on the map now. I got a Facebook stalker.
Dr. Nikki wants to be trolled. You heard it here. Challenge her ability to have good mental health and troll her on her Facebook and see how that turns out.
That's the goal I'm striving for.
Bring your Windex is all I'm going to say. Bring your Windex.
Right in your eyes. So I think that's another part of it. So there are communities in which this idea around mistrust is completely healthy and founded. And I'm speaking specifically about the Black community, that there is a long history in this country of Blacks being abused and mistreated, studied, pathologized,
I have syphilis. I wasn't even having sex, Doc. How did I get syphilis? The history is there, right?
Beyond even that, most of modern gynecological tools and processes came from experimenting on Black women. So things that we take for granted, we, the collective, we take for granted in terms of how the health profession is structured and organized now. There's a longstanding history of oppression, of systematic violence, of racism, scientifically supported racism aimed towards Black folks, for which some people have a healthy paranoia around. And so I think that cannot be discounted, and it shouldn't be invalidated for people around that. And I don't know if you listeners know, but I'm Black. And so I know. And so is Tomas.
No, put my business to you. That's what I'm saying.
See, I'm putting your
You
business
just
out there.
in my Dupee Deeps. You know nobody knows that I'm black. They just think I'm really well tanned. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know where you're saying that.
You're such a label. Let's stop being silly. Seriously. Well, we'll take a break from being silly. And so I'm a black psychologist, and there's actually an association of black psychologists, of which there are several folks that are practicing clinicians within that. There is a new organization that was founded here and is growing exponentially in Houston called Melanin and Mental Health for folks who are who have melanin, right? So folks of color and their experiences with mental health, that it is made up of mental health professionals. So we are seeing more and more representation on this side of the couch for folks. And so if like your culture is important to you, if your race and your ethnic identity is a central part to who you are and how you see the world, then I think it is absolutely important for you to value that in your search for mental health practitioners and to do shopping around for that. I want to go back to this idea around mistrust first, and then we can go back to this idea of therapist fit, because that's also important. Cultural mistrust is this idea that because I recognize that I'm a member of a racial group that has been systematically denigrated, abused, oppressed in this society, I have developed a set of mental barriers, maybe, if you will, at least a set of mental practices and coping skills to help keep me safe. So I know that people like me and my people haven't been respected or treated well or given proper treatment in this particular context. So I'm going to have a really justified, healthy sense of paranoia in encountering whatever said professional. And I think that that's a demonstration of healthy and functional coping. What happens is, if that gets in the way of you being able to access services for your own health and well-being, now we've moved to the spectrum of being dysfunctional. So that we want to talk to people about how you might be able to assess and use your discernment to decide, I want to go get mental health services. How can I find the right therapist for me? How can I ask questions that will make sure that this is a person that I can begin to develop a trustworthy relationship with? As a more functional way of managing that real justified sense of cultural mistrust. The other side of that is, I think a lot of people just aren't informed about how therapy works. So you were saying, why would I pay somebody? Well, the reason why you pay somebody is because, one, you're talking about people that are skilled and trained professionals. So this isn't the same thing as talking to your homegirl while riding the Q train home at the end of the day. You're going to an office to talk to someone who's gone to school, who should not only have gone to school and been credentialed, but who should be actively getting continuing education, who should be actively continuing to read and consume and stay on top of the most innovative methods, what the research is saying, so that they are well informed in how to best serve you. So that's one part of it. The other part that comes along with it is, when you are in a professional relationship with a mental health clinician, that mental health clinician is bound by certain ethics and legalities that prevents them from telling all your business in the streets. Okay, Tomas? So your therapist isn't going to be like, let me get on YouTube right now and let everybody know what Tomas was just talking about.
That my therapist has a podcast of my issues. I just need to find it so I could snatch his license out of his hand. Because right? I got stories in therapy, you best to believe.
Anybody that has listened to one episode of this podcast knows you got stories. But I don't know that everybody just knows that. And so that is, listen, if you go to seek mental health services, and in the very first 10 to 15 minutes of sitting down with that therapist, they aren't talking to you about confidentiality and limits thereof, then you need to get out. Because